Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Faith Like Wildflowers podcast. As you can tell from the title for today's episode, we're going to be continuing the mission series and diving deep into my missions trip to YWAM, Jamaica. This trip I took with my school. It was more for like a service and learning trip, but we did do missions work there. I would say it was a missions trip. I don't know why they call it a service and learning trip, but we traveled to Jamaica, Montego Bay, and then traveled to the YWAM base in Jamaica, and it was absolutely beautiful there. And we did a lot of work cleaning up the base in one guest room that they had. We cleaned up that room or that guest home a lot, and then we were able to paint it for them. And then we also were able to help out at a school, which I will share more about, and then also help out at a disability orphanage, for children and young adults. Excuse me. And that was my favorite experience there. And we also went to a Jamaican church, which was really cool. I'll tell you about that experience. And yeah, the rest of the time we did like different sessions and things as well. This trip I also did not journal every single day what we did, just my favorite moments. And some things that I got from the different sessions or worship that we did with the directors at the base. So, for the church, the worship was very loud and lively, and the service was really long. It was from 7:30 to 11:30, so it was 4 hours. And prayer was passionately prayed, and during worship, everyone was dancing and praising God. And there was like mini sermons and mini prayers before every single thing we did. Before the sermon, before each worship time, before communion. We took communion that day. It was very interesting to see how they gave like a mini sermon, literally before everything that we did. There was a lot of people that were agreeing with the pastor, or like if he was saying something, they would kind of say it with him if they could tell what he was going to say, if it's like a common scripture or something. And yeah, they were very welcoming and kind. So that was my experience at the church. I really enjoyed being able to go to the church there. And then when we went to the disabilities school or orphanage, some were very severely disabled, and others not as much. But it was such an impactful experience. When I was in elementary school, I would help students who have autism onto the bus at the end of the day. As like, we had safety patrols that would like help kids get on the bus and help with safety and like behavior on the bus so the bus driver could focus more. And sixth graders would do that if they wanted to. And so my role for getting kids on the bus was to help students with autism, and I grew a heart for people with autism and with disabilities, and so it was super, super touching and fulfilling to be able to go to this disability school and just spend time in fellowship with these students. When we got there, they were practicing their Christmas program that they were going to do for their parents, so I kind of just watched them with that. But there was a girl that came up to me who wasn't a part of that program because she wasn't as they kind of like were having the more high functioning disabled students in the program, and the girl that came up to me was not, and she kind of like pulled me over and wanted me to go push her on the swing, and that was super sweet because she couldn't talk, but she just like connected with me right away and wanted me to go over and push her on the swing. And I was pushing her on the swing for a while, and then when they were done practicing their program, we went over to like do these dances that we learned at the base a few days before that with them, and kind of teach them the motions and have them do them with us. And so we did that, and then they just wanted to keep dancing. The people that run the school or the orphanage put on some music, and we just were dancing around with them. We got made like a Congo line, and we just danced individually with them and just had such a good time. It was so freeing and so much fun. At one point, I had to sit down for a break, and two girls came up to me. One was sitting on my lap. I think it was actually three. One was sitting on my lap, and the other two were holding one of each one of my hands. And I will never forget that picture in my mind, just like being in the hands and feet of Jesus, and these three girls that just love me so deeply, and they literally don't even know who I am. They just love that I came to spend time with them, and just to feel loved, because they're looked on as outcasts in that culture, and looked down as like the least of the least. And usually the parents don't even want anything to do with them. They just drop them off because they can't afford them, and it's like looked down on the family to have someone like that. Other families, they still love their child, and they still visit them and bring them gifts and things. They just can't afford them to take care of them, because it's a lot of money to be able to sustain a good life for someone who is disabled in that culture. And so it was just an amazing time to be able to be at that church, or to be at that school with them and spend time with them. And even getting the ones that didn't want to join, and just like making them feel included when they didn't want to dance or they were shy, or just like going over to them and hyping them up, and then have them joining the circle and dancing with us. It was so much fun, such a good experience. And then my next favorite thing that we did was go to a school and help the kids with sounds and spelling for English. And I got to help a girl who struggles more, and it was kind of difficult, but she eventually was kind of focusing then, instead of just messing around talking with me and just like not wanting to work. And I got to help a few other kids then and connect with them. But afterwards, when we went out, it was their lunchtime, so then they all just completely surrounded us before we left the school to go back for our lunch. And they were all just like wanting hugs, wanting selfies. They were playing with the one girl's hair from my team that's hair was down. Mine was in a braid, so they weren't able to play with mine. But since our hair is different, a lot of times if you go on mission trips to another culture, our hair is like softer and really long than their hair, depending on where you go. Their hair is just a lot of a different texture, and so they love to play with it and braid it themselves and stuff. So that was super cool. Excuse me. To just be completely surrounded by all these kids that are coming and want to like just hug us, give us high fives, talk to us, and take pictures with us. It was really fun. It was a funny story from that experience. One of the kids asked if I was Chinese, because when I smile, my eyes squint a lot, and it's just the way my smile is. But because of that, they asked if I was Chinese, which is really funny. But yeah, I don't really remember too much from that trip. It was actually kind of a rough trip for me. I was getting really homesick again. When I'm homesick, I don't get sick in the stomach. I just get like, I really miss home and I really want to be at home. And I still struggled with anxiety during that time as well. So that trip was really, really hard for me. But it was after that trip that I grew a lot in between the time of that trip and my next trip. And the only reason I went on the next trip was because of how much I grew. Because that was a trip where I got to decide if I wanted to go. It wasn't like because my youth group was going or because I had to for school. When I went to Myra, which I will talk about in the next episode. But yeah, so this trip to Jamaica was a really good experience, and I really enjoyed those experiences that I just shared with you. But it was a really hard trip for me, and I wasn't very close to the people that I went with, and so it made it a little more difficult as well. But overall, it was a great experience, and it was one of my favorite experiences to have at school. So I'm super grateful that Sorry, the mic turned off. I'm super glad that I was able to go and love on the people there. I hope that that's the only part that I missed, and I didn't miss a lot. But yeah, that's all that I have really for Jamaica. I think I went on this trip in November of 2023. So yeah, really great experience. And I love YWAM, so it was cool to be able to go experience another YWAM base. And another culture as well, because it was my second time out of the country, and it was 4 months after I had gone to Costa Rica, which was my first time out of the country. I don't really have any funny moments from the trip. No, traveling was smooth. It wasn't hectic or anything. So yeah, I think overall it was just different because it was with school, so there's a lot more rules and a lot more scheduling. And sometimes I like when there's a little bit of like free time and just kind of doing your own thing, not as much leadership above you, which youth group trips have that, but it's not as bad as school. So yeah, so next time I will talk about my first time going to Myra, which was this year in January of 2025. And I had gone on other missions trips in between then. There was one with my youth group in the summer of 2024, but that one was an experience. If you know, you know what that was like. And that one I just don't have as much to share with that, and I honestly wouldn't consider that like a missions trip. It was in the States, but that doesn't make a difference on if it was actual missions trip. It was just very different. Again, if you know, you know. But I'm sharing about my recent ones from this year next. So, Myro in January. And then the following episode will be Romania in July. And then Myro again in August. Just a few days ago, I actually got back from that. So, come back for those episodes, and I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your day.